how about some bonus weekend content for you all about the Pacers' new draftees? We got to meet Jarace Walker and Ben Sheppard in Indy today. Hear from Chad Buchanan and Rick Carlisle from on those two guys, got to chat one-on-one with Ben Sheppard. Lots of notes about the Pacers draft, a new two-way signee they have, all coming today on the Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to another bonus edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and SI, and today it's Saturday, but we've got to keep covering this Pacers draft, the new first-round picks, the draftees in Indy on Friday. Ben Sheppard and Jarace Walker to meet with the media, to meet their new staff with the Pacers, and of course they were on stage with Chad Buchanan and Rick Carlisle, so we got to ask them questions about the draft as well. Got more clarity on a new two-way signee the Pacers had, a National Player of the Year this past season, candidate, not the winner, for Kentucky in Oscar Tshiebwe and Trace Jackson Davis notes. Just so much to get to today on Locked On Pacers. Let's just start with what all happened today in the introduction, the stuff said by Chad Buchanan and the draftees. And this is, of course, a weekend show, so I will just kind of be riffing a lot. This won't be as structured, but it was cool to hear from the front office on this draft, right? Chad Buchanan up there, the GM, was talking about the Pacers wanting to add talent and character. Now, he felt like they got both of those things from both of their first-round picks. Meeting them just once, I can agree. Of course, we'll see as time progresses, but I think that was a big thing for the Pacers in that way. And the traits that stood out to him about these guys: shooting, defense, and versatility. The shooting, of course, applies to Ben Sheppard, who was fantastic as a shooter in his workout with the Pacers, and of course, this past season at Belmont. Defensively, that applies to Jarace Walker. Versatility perhaps applies to both. Rick Carlisle pointed out that Ben Sheppard could play point guard in a pinch. Chad Buchanan has pointed out that Jarace Walker played point guard in high school, so we've heard both parties talk about the versatility these guys have positionally and what that could mean, and with Carlisle later calling out that both of them could be playmakers who have a high feel for this team. So that was the big notes about the two picks themselves. The other note I wanted to point out from Chad Buchanan in the presser today was about the trade they made with the Denver Nuggets. He did note that, and this I thought was obvious, but to get it on the record was of course good, the roster crunch was the big determining factor in doing that deal. Obviously, I think they probably are going to get plus value from that, because I don't think the Clippers will have one of the best even 5 records in the league next year. I don't think the Thunder, Jazz, or Rockets will either. So they probably traded 29 and 32 for 40 and something like, at worst, 24, 23. Obviously, I could be wrong about that, but that is the gamble, and the roster crunch they have led to them doing that, which makes a lot of sense. They still kind of have a roster crunch, which Monday's show for you everydayers will be all about how the draft impacts the roster from a roster size perspective, the winners and losers on the team, from who was added, all sorts of stuff, cap updates, and then we'll dive in to free agency. But I thought that was important to kind of note from Buchanan. Other stuff Chad said on Jarace Walker, he says he thinks he can guard multiple positions. That's good to hear from the team. Of course, I've noted that a few times myself, but that's going to be huge if he can guard 4s and 3s and 5s, just the lineups they're allowed to put him in. And he says that's where Walker views himself as well, that defensive kind of player who can do all those things. It's going to be crucial for the Pacers. And he cited that offensive upside from that point guard in high school stuff, which of course I brought up. And spoiler, we'll be hearing from somebody who watched a lot of Jarace Walker in high school next week on Locked On Pacers. And a funny note from the presser was that Rick Carlisle said before the presser, Jarace Walker was asking Rick Carlisle if he could get in the gym for a workout that day. So Carlisle and Buchanan had to coordinate how they were going to do that. Obviously, of course, Jarace Walker looks good for doing so, but also I believe it because it's the first day with his new team. He wants to get in there and perhaps be a little distracted from the 10 bajillion media things he has to do in the first day after being drafted. The other thing Chad Buchanan said on Ben Sheppard, he said the scouting staff the Pacers have has been, quote, pounding the table, unquote, on him for years. He grew significantly at Belmont. That was something the Pacers liked. They've talked about that a lot, even with free agents. They like guys who improve every year, and the shooting was, of course, a critical part of that. Some other stuff that I thought was noteworthy from the Pacers GM on this particular night. He talked about moving back from 7 to 8, right? That trade that, at first, if you weren't keeping up on Twitter and you were just watching the draft, extremely confusing. Bilal Coulibaly walks across the stage wearing a Pacers hat for about 10 minutes. There was some confusion, at least from fans. I, of course, following Shams, knew what was happening, but about what was going on. Pacers, if you remember, trade pick 7 to the Wizards. They get pick 8 from the Wizards. They go back one spot, and they still get their guy. And they also get a Wizards 2028, a Phoenix Suns 2028 second rounder, which could be great. That's after Durant, Booker, and Beal's contracts expire, and a Wizards 2029 second rounder. And the history of the Wizards says that shouldn't be good, but their new front office is doing, to me, a killer job. We'll see on that one. But either way, getting stuff to get your guy, that's great. So he said there was a team chasing a certain player that wasn't potentially going to fall to them, which means to me, someone wanted Coulibaly at 7 also, and the Wizards had to give up stuff to make that happen. That also allowed the Pacers to get their guy that they wanted and, of course, scoop up assets along the way. Just good business for the Blue and Gold to pull that off. He said on discovering Ben Sheppard, the shooter that few know about. They found him forever ago. They noticed him for the first time. He got on the radar of Pacers scouts who, again, were pounding the table for him at the Missouri Valley Conference tournament his freshman season at Belmont forever ago, right? They were happy to get him late in the draft, and he said that Sheppard just tried to be himself throughout the pre-draft process, which was crucial for something that they liked about him. Is that I talked to him for 3 minutes one-on-one. I'll have a story up about him tomorrow. He's just so smiley. He's such a cool dude. I'm really looking forward to getting to know him and seeing how he can be on the court. The other thing, the last thing I wanted to jot down from what Chad Buchanan, the GM, had to say was, I asked him in the presser, when did he know that Jarace could be the pick this year? And he cited a time kind of before I expected him to say. He said they identified him before the season even started as someone who could be a good fit if they were able to get him in the draft, because they had been tracking him in high school and he was a really high-level recruit. I think he was a top 10 recruit in the whole nation last year, and they said, okay, this could be a guy that would be a good fit for us with his creation ability and his defensive upside. And so, of course, they ended up high enough to pick him. They were too good at some points in the season, so they've been on him for a while. His skill set certainly fits exactly what they need, and so the fact that after a full season they were still able to get him with the pick that they ultimately ended up with, of course, is great news for the Pacers. And I thought it was funny. Multiple times they said he looks like a linebacker, and standing next to him, he does. He is huge. Man, is he going to be imposing at the 4 spot. Want to talk a little bit about what the rookies themselves said for the first time getting to speak with them. Before we do that, let me quickly share with you guys some notes from eBay Motors. Finding the right parts for your car is like building a championship team. It's all about making sure everything is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay's Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to My Garage and look for the green check to know the part will fit or your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. With over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit. Only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Pacers your first listen today and every single day. For your second listen, listen to Locked On Blazers to hear the latest on Damian Lillard, which is, quite frankly, obnoxious to me. I want to unsubscribe from hourly Damian Lillard updates, but Mike Richmond will break it all down for you, so I don't have to listen to it every hour. I can just listen to Mike Richmond whenever I want on Locked On Blazers to hear the latest on Damian Lillard and the Blazers, who is Scoot Henderson now. Great pick for them. Let's continue talking about the Pacers draft. We got to meet the 2 first-round picks today. TBD on the timing of the second-rounders, Mojave King and Isaiah Wong. Chad Buchanan did note he's excited about those guys as well, but I only want to talk about the guys who are available to speak to today. First of all, I said this earlier, the things that stood out to me about them, just watching, right, observing. You can learn a lot from guys before you even talk to them. Jarace Walker's huge. He's like it's not that the height necessarily, although he is all of 6'7". Like the linebacker build thing that Chad said more than once is true. Like he looks like he could be playing football. And I don't know how that will exactly translate to the NBA, but it's a very unique build for basketball, and I'm looking forward to seeing what that means. Like my first thinking when I saw him was, wow, his screens could just be crazy powerful. If he could really use those shoulders, it'll be really hard to get around him. And Ben Sheppard, this is not a basketball quality. This is a human quality. Dude smiled for the whole freaking time. Definitely wears his emotions on his face. It'll be very easy to tell how he's feeling at any given moment in a game, on the bench, whatever he ends up being. And he's a great kid. I'm looking forward to seeing what he can become. I like that Greg Doyle asked him about if he ever wanted to transfer out of a mid-major school on his path to the NBA. And he said, yeah, I had some chances, but I wanted to stay at Belmont. And he did for all 4 years. So first we heard from both of them really at the same time. They were both up on the stage together between Carlisle and Buchanan. Jarace Walker said that during his workout, this was kind of referenced a lot, he felt like the vibe he had from that workout was the best of any individual workout he had in the pre-draft process. That's obviously easy to say once that team actually picks you. You can look back and go, oh yeah, that was really great. But it was also his first one, right? So it was the one he was comparing stuff to, and he remembered having really great conversations with Rick Carlisle. Carlisle talked about picking him up, and they were driving around. They walked through the arena together and were talking, and it was a really good visit. Rick said yesterday that he believes in this pre-draft process, the player he spent the most time with was Jarace Walker on that day that they also brought in Taylor Hendricks. Jarace remembers all that, remembers walking through the facility, and remembers listening to jazz music with Rick Carlisle, which I thought was a cool tidbit to throw in there. Good memory from Walker, and I think that workout meant a lot to him and the Pacers, that it went well, that he proved he can defend really well in sessions against Gennaro Pargo. All these prospects had to go against Pargo, and before you laugh, he's still in his 30s and was a killer NBA player. Like, that's a tough assignment, and they learned a lot about what he can be from that day. And it's funny how workouts go. I think this is a very telling one, and I'll have more on this with Sheppard in my story, but I always say this, like, they've been studying these guys for years. You heard Buchanan, I just said this, say that they had their eye on Jarace before the season even started, right? Like, one workout, the on-court part can certainly wow a team, but they've been studying these guys for years. To me, it's really hard to say that significantly sways a team. It's those moments that can significantly sway a team. How a guy behaves when he's hanging out with a coach all day. The moments where they listen to jazz together standing out, right? I think that all says a lot about the emotional intelligence of Jarace Walker too. And the fact that, the vibe, the word he kept using, was good, I think says a lot about the workout. I think that is the biggest value of those pre-draft workouts, is getting to meet these guys face to face. And the Pacers like, of course, what they got in him in that meeting before they picked him. They were happy about him. Jarace Walker also said that he thinks a fast-paced team is a great fit for him. I agree, just from watching him play in college. His defense and defense, that was said wrong, and rebounding should help the Pacers. I also agree with that. They're going to need to be better on the glass this season, and we'll talk about a way that they could be in the third segment. Either way, those are two ways the Pacers need help. If he can provide it, that's excellent for the Pacers, and of course excellent for him, because that means minutes could be coming his way. No idea if he'll start or not. I've gotten that question a few times. What do you think the rotation will be, Tony? Ask me again after free agency is my answer. We'll see, although you'll learn Monday. Free agency could be a lot tamer than you previously expected for the Pacers, just given how their draft has gone, but we'll see, again, how this week ends up shaking out. Jarace said he got the vibe the Pacers could be picking him after the workout. He felt comfortable with the team and the meetings that he had. Of course, that did ultimately happen. You can hear a lot of these quotes if you listen back to the workout. I believe it's on the Pacers YouTube page as well as on their Twitter feed, if you want to hear what these guys had to say in the public setting. Now, here's the thing. You'll read quotes and stories from me, from Scott, from Dustin, from every media person who was there. We got to talk to them after the press conference in more private settings. So we got a lot of more to know about those guys there. So, of course, you'll learn a lot from the presser. I highly encourage you to watch it, especially if you want to get to know these guys a little bit as a fan. But there's going to be a lot more to come on all of these players. Ben Sheppard said it meant a lot for him to be selected by this team specifically. He wanted to prove himself in every workout, and he felt like the Pacers one went particularly well for him on both ends of the floor. It was a 3-on-3 one, the max it could be 6 players, and he really thought he impressed on both ends. Like, he remembered that workout pretty well when I talked to him about it later, and he said something that stood out about the Pacers when he was in town for his visit was the sense of family about the organization. He had his family along with his agent at the press conference, but he said that sense really stood out to him and stuck with him that day when he was in Indiana for the day. And he said, "I'm happy to be here." On after someone asked him a question, and then 1 second later, without missing a beat, Jarace right next to him goes, "I'm happy to be here too," which was pretty funny. We all kind of laughed at those two, already providing some synergy and comedic relief. Yeah, they're good press conference guys, which of course, as a media person, I'm happy about. And I think they're good players too. We'll see where they ultimately shake out on the court. We also got the Summer League schedule today. That's not a part of this presser, but either way, that means it looks like, barring injury, the first time we will see these two wearing Pacers uniform would be July 8th against the Wizards. But on the same day we learned when we'll see him play, we got to meet him. And that was the standout things to me that they said in that particular setting when they were up on the podium. Again, I'll have stories on all of this stuff on Pacers SI, particularly a one-on-one conversation with the Shepherd that'll be out tomorrow, and general thoughts from the workout. Let's close out today's show with some more stuff that's been buzzing around Pacers draft and signings since the draft. A player they signed to a two-way deal, a player they did not sign to a two-way deal of much local interest, and some undrafted free agents that will be on the Pacers Summer League roster per multiple reports. Let's close out today's show with that. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Pacers your first listen today and every single day. For your second listen, check out my favorite draft, Locked On Mavs. They got their guy at 10. Wait, they traded 10. And Davis Bertans, I just said his name wrong, and 12 to get 12. And they got their guy at 12 and got off Bertans' money. But wait, the trade exception they got for Bertans they used to get Rashawn Holmes, who's better than Bertans, and Omax Prosper, a prospect that I loved. So they got two good prospects and a better player. Good draft from the Dallas Mavericks. You can learn more over at Locked On Mavs. Let's dive into the final stuff I want to get to today on the Pacers draft. Monday, we'll talk about how the draft impacts the rest of the roster. I always think that is a very important thing to talk about to set the scene for free agency. First and foremost, Trayce Jackson-Davis. A lot of local buzz about him not being picked by the Pacers. Obviously, as someone who roots for IU, I am rooting for Trayce no matter where he ends up. I will stop rooting for him in the NBA, obviously. That would be bad for my job. But I was curious to see where he would go, what it would mean for his career. He goes 57th to Golden State, tweets during the second round. Y'all are going to regret this. I can't actually tell. People keep saying he tweeted that after a Pacers pick. I don't actually know if that's the case. It was so hard to tell with the timing of the draft. Like, if it was after a Pacers pick was announced on Twitter, if it was after a Pacers pick was actually in the draft. Like, to me, it felt like it was like pick 53 when he said that, but that's just, that doesn't matter when he actually said it. He said that during the second round. People wondered, why didn't the Pacers pick him? They need fours. He's a 4. It was late in the draft. He's a good upside swing at that late in the draft. I agree with all that. It's been reported now by lots of people. Greg Doyle locally for the Indy Star. Chad Buchanan hinted at this on 1075 The Fan on the morning show with Kevin and Query. And Tim Kawakami of The Athletic also said this. It sounds like Trayce did not want a two-way contract. And so as people were wondering if they would pick him in the second round, he was saying no. He wanted to go somewhere where he could get a guaranteed deal. Lo and behold, the Warriors, who are super tax conscious because their team's super expensive, really want second-round picks that are cheaper. And Trayce just so happens that he fits them pretty well and can learn from Steve Kerr and Draymond Green. With that team, really good fit for him. Scott Agnes already reporting he'll get a 3-year deal with them instead of a two-way. So it sounds like even if the Pacers did want him, he did not necessarily want to go there because they could only have offered a two-way. They don't have the standard roster spots to bring in someone at 47 and do that. So maybe the Pacers truly had no interest, but it sounds like per all the reporting, even if they did, they couldn't have picked him because he wanted to go somewhere else where the opportunity and money was stronger, and who can blame him? It did work out for him to land in Golden State. As a fan of him, rooting for IU all these years, I think that's a great fit for him. So I think that's also somewhat common. Like, I think that's a tougher thing for fans to kind of understand sometimes is in the second round, especially the late second round, guys who don't want two ways will go undrafted sometimes just so they can pick their destination for their team, right? There's a bunch of famous examples of this. I don't want to say any for fear of accidentally being wrong, but this does happen somewhat often. It's a smart way for agents to get their clients to good locations, or a smart way for players to be able to get somewhere where they maybe play or they like the development system. And some players just want to get picked. Maybe they can get a two-way with a team and they're just happy to be picked. That's totally fine too. but this is fairly common, and it sounds like that's what happened with Trace. I haven't actually followed up with anybody on this myself, but that reporting all makes a ton of sense to me. Another player worth talking about, another very, very good college player, Oscar Tshiebwe from the Democratic Republic of Congo, and of course from Kentucky, 4-year player who is a beast on the glass. 15.1 rebounds per game as a junior, 13.7 rebounds per game as a senior. He went undrafted in the draft. Shams Charania reported it originally. I can confirm it after chatting with a few sources within the Pacers. He's joining the Pacers on a 2-way contract. Well, that is surprising. We'll talk about that in just a second and again on Monday. But it's a 1-year, 2-way contract. Oscar Tshiebwe is with the Pacers this coming season. Pacers add some rebounding. Of course, I think a guy like that's perfect for a 2-way, right? He's already 23, but he clearly has a high-level skill, and if you can develop one other thing for him, it's very easy to imagine how he would be on the court for an NBA team, but he can also dominate the G League and stay on the floor there to develop in-game action. TBD on what this means for the rest of the Pacers, but they drafted 2 guys late in the second round who feel like 2-way candidates to me. I don't know that they will or won't be. I haven't gotten any confirmation on that. But Mojave King and Isaiah Wong, if they're on 2-way deals, that's all 3 of the Pacers' 2-way slots. I'm curious what this means for Kendall Brown, or if the Pacers have something else coming or up their sleeve with their late second rounders, but can confirm Oscar Tshiebwe is coming to the Pacers. That cannot officially be signed until July 1st when the new league year starts. So you won't see that be official for a while, but a good fit for them. If he can play the 4, that'd be even better, but we'll see what he ultimately ends up being. Good 2-way swing to me, though, just because of his high-level rebounding skill. Yeah, I don't know if I have anything else. He did work out for the Pacers in the pre-draft process. I missed that one. I was in New York for a very important life trip. I got engaged on that trip, as I said earlier on this podcast, so I missed that interview, but Scott Agnes has it up on fieldhousefiles.com. If you want to see it, it's in his story about Tshiebwe signing with the Pacers. The last roster thing, we've heard some Summer League leak-ins on 2 guys who could be playing for the Pacers in Summer League. Nate Lejewski, who played, I probably just said his last name wrong, but he played as a forward for Notre Dame this past season. Chris Haynes and Brian Kalbrowski both have reported he'll be joining the Pacers for Summer League. He also worked out for the Pacers in one of their first workouts, actually, up with Notre Dame. Did not get drafted, obviously. And then from Liberty, guard Darius McGee also reportedly will be joining the Pacers for Summer League. I think it was somebody from No Ceilings who reported that one. I'm sorry if you're listening, person who reported that I can't remember your name. I did not put the link in my spreadsheet, which I typically do. There's a lot of notes for this show, as I'm sure you can imagine. But that is the notes on who the Pacers are bringing in so far for Summer League. We don't know if those are Exhibit 10s or beyond or anything like that at this time, or anyone else on the Pacers Summer League roster. But of the undrafted free agents, those are the only 2 whose names I have heard so far connected to the Pacers in this pre-draft process. Once I get them confirmed, I'll maybe put them in a story or tweet it out or something like that. That's everything from day 2 of Pacers Draft Them. They have new players. They've been introduced. We got to learn more about them and what they could mean to this team. And they also signed a player who was fantastic, especially statistically in college. And, oh, by the way, I should have included this. Tshiebwe was excellent when I watched him at the NBA Draft Combine as well. His rebounding translates to any level of basketball. We'll see where that ends up for the Pacers or the Mad Ants or whatever their team name is going to end up being next year, since they're no longer in Fort Wayne. But I like that deal. I think that's smart. And if you need anything else from me on the Pacers draft, you can tweet at me at Tony R. East, or comment if you're watching this on YouTube. Back on Monday, nothing tomorrow, back Monday, talking how the Pacers draft picks impacts the roster, what they can do in free agency, and their money situation. So the ripple effects from all this. Thank you guys a ton for listening on the weekend. We'll see you soon.